it goes back multiple years now where the traditional media outlets that we relied on in the past don't exist, or they have a diminished role, and social media, of course, so it has become much more, especially with the younger generations, much more vibrant. And so I'm glad that we started to put some things in here, because it was all about how we communicate with the public. A few years ago, we were dealing with some very, very difficult fiscal issues, and the whole information seemed to be swirling just within the college, and limited amount of information was getting out into the public. And so this was one of those efforts, and I hope this is the first step in how we can do a better job on reaching out. One of which would be, as we reach over to the newsletter, is that having a newsletter that can reflect what's going on. But the point, and it's been raised, and it's a good point, is that, there are legal ramifications and parameters to it on what an elected official can and can't do when an institution, the college, sends out information to the constituents. It cannot be politically driven. And so there is a fine line in anything we do. I'm sure we will always have to have those checks and balances in place. And that's why for almost my entire tenure on this board, rarely, if at all, you see any reference to trustees. And good and bad. You want people in the community to know that the trustees are there, but you walk that very fine line. So I think this document, as we work on communications overall, how we reach out into the community to better let them know what's going on with the college, and that gets over into another item, which was good points coming up, and that as far as with the community outreach, as far as, and I know I shared this with Superintendent President Oakley and also President Otto, is that to some other colleges have had what they're referred to, what they have is a trustee advisory committee. And it's a very interesting concept. Again, it's one that I would like to see us pursue a little bit more in the future. And again, the whole intent is to get communications of what's going on in the college. And again, walking that very fine line, because we are elected. And so we do need to have those safeguards in place, not only to protect ourselves from ourselves, but also the institution, and not stepping over into becoming a political venue. But I really believe the trustee advisory committees that you see at some other colleges, San Diego is the one that I really used as the pilot. I think that's another good way to do outreach into the community, and I hope as this document, we develop some ideas that can be included as well. One of the things that came up during the because we kept going back and forth, and when we talk about transparency, which we're all in favor of, and then we would reach back about the minutes. And I want to touch on that just very briefly, because we've had this discussion for the last 2 years on what the minutes should be in the minutes, what shouldn't be in the minutes. That is pretty well set right now on what should and should not be in there by policy. Do I call it policy? Yeah, not regulations. And that really came about, just so you know, in 2002, when we did begin to televise these meetings. The intent was, well, they're televised. So people can watch. If you have that sleep-in disorder, or you really don't have anything going on in the evening, you can watch these meetings. Or more importantly, you can find and follow exactly what's going on. At the time, the intent was that would eliminate the need for the verbatim type of minutes, which are page after page of people saying exactly what their sentences are being corrected in the minutes the following meeting. So that was the intent. It really was to make it more transparent, save the college more money, because we wouldn't have to have a person hired, but the intent was to be more transparent. But when we reach back over into the minutes, and I've heard it again, the minutes are right now, unless we want to change, but it is just the actions on we will move forward, on what takes place, what this business meeting is really all about. If we want to change that, we can. But that's what we've been following. But there's been reasons behind it. And again, it all gets, how do we do a better job of communicating with our constituencies? The final point I'll just make right now as we move forward, and as I said, there's a few things I would like to see in here in the future, but it's a start. I went back many years to 2002. I can also go back a few years when we talked about certain issues that we were addressing here at the college that were very controversial, and trying to get information out to people in the community, of what we're trying to do. And then in the last 2 years and last year, about how we do a better job communicating within the board itself. So I would just hope we take this in the spirit of it's the first step. It's not the last step. It's not the only step. But it's an intent of how we do a better job overall in communication, whether it be within the trustees, within the college, or within the general community as well. And I think in that spirit that we can move forward and try to make this grow and do better, and we will. But it is just that first step. The last point is that it's come up, and please, there's even though we try to, as a board, there are certain things that trustees, and I've said this, and my apologies to the people that have heard it, this is a very different governing board than, for example, a Long Beach City Council. Trustees, that's why you're called trustees. It's a different makeup sometimes that people don't really grasp entirely. But one thing that doesn't change is that you're elected. And so I've read this, and I never take out of this that someone is going to tell me as an elected official or any elected official that you don't have the right to communicate in the way you see fit. Because at the end of the day, the people that will tell you if they see fit or not are the voters. And they will let you know. So I didn't read into that document, that in any way, nor would I support that an elected official doesn't have the ability to communicate with the community as they see fit, and following within the spirit of things we're doing here at the college as well. So I think it's a good beginning. It's a long time coming. I know at the last State of the College address, that was when we formally, I know, were moving forward on this, but a lot of things have taken place before then. And so for that, I appreciate the work of Trustee Ardo and Trustee Archuleta for taking this, and staff support, and trying to take a very, sometimes not really clear, because communications can be many things to many people, and at least bringing forward for the first time in a long time something that we can now try to get our arms around. But those particular items in particular, the communications with the public, how we do it, whether it be electronically or with meetings with an advisory committee, or then all the way into how we conduct our meeting here and how we then give that information out into the public. As I said, that seemed to be coming back and forth, and I think we've talked about it enough. But the minute issue is one we've gone back and forth on. I'm comfortable with where we are with it right now. But if people want to communicate in other ways, electronically, I don't know how you can ever stop an elected official from doing whatever they want. But at the same time, I think we all realize we have parameters, and at the end of the day, we work together. And, well, any governmental entity works together. And hopefully we'll continue to do that to try and make this document in the future work in areas that people may think there's some shortfalls in it. But to both my colleagues on the board, my thanks for taking on this very difficult and sometimes unwielding issue, and bringing at least something that we can be in the discussion on. So my thanks to you on that. And I'll look forward to February when we come back again and hopefully have some more details. Thank you, President Otto.
I'm hoping there are no more comments on this right now, just because we need to move on to some other things. And as fascinating as I'm sure you're finding this, we've got a lot of other issues on the agenda. So we can move on.
One final.
I knew it.
Final. No, this is really just to acknowledge the work that the team did. And I just want to thank Vice President Bynum and Vice President Gable and our Director John Pope for the work in putting this together and working with
Sylvia Lynch in the back.
Yes, and Sylvia, thank you so much for all the work that you did in putting this together.
This does not mean your name is on this or that anybody will come and talk to you about this. You're not necessarily associated with it. Okay. We are moving on to the consent agenda. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately if a member of the Board of Trustees so requests. Approval of the consent agenda. All agenda items listed under the consent agenda may be acted upon by one motion to approve, and if we have items that are removed, we can vote on those that have not been removed. Does anyone want to remove any items from the consent agenda?
Yes, I have two.
What are they?
5.9 and 5.10.
Okay. 5.9 is change order ratifications, and 5.10 is ratifications of contracts under $175,000. So I would entertain a motion on, oops, excuse me.
Sorry.
Jackie, you're giving me a bad time. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
5.9 and 5.10. What if the board secretary decided not to take any minutes?
So when appropriate, I will make the motion to approve the consent calendars with the exception of item 5.9, 5.10 that had been pulled for discussion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Archuleta. Motion made by trustee Kellogg. Any discussion? All in, can't do that. Roll call vote, please, on the balance of the agenda.
Irma Archuleta,
Aye.
Virginia Baxter,
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg,
Aye.
Doug Otto,
Aye.
Sunny Zia.
Aye.
Okay. 5.9, trustee Zia.
Yes, this change order with Balfour Beatty, so I'd like to, if you can refresh my memory on when the project was awarded and also why we're deleting items at this point. I believe there's a deletion of the of an item there. And is this a matter, what kind of change order is this? Was it as a result of a design error, errors or omission? If someone can answer that.
We'll turn that over to Vice President Gable.
Thank you. To answer your question on when it was awarded, I don't have that.
Was it if I recall correctly, it was recently awarded within like the year, within last year?
It was within the last 2 years, so it's been under construction for about a year. I was trying to remember when we did the groundbreaking.
July.
But July, yes.
July of 2014.
Thank you, Trustee Baxter. And to answer your question on why we have the change order, there were some unknown utilities that were found that we needed to hook up the transformers appropriately for this site. And so that's the main cause of much of the change order. And then modifying the food service equipment, the contract was awarded before we had converted over to our new food service vendor. And so it was the old food service vendor who had specified specific equipment. The new food service vendor didn't need all of that equipment, so we were deleting some of that.
Great. So it's really attributable to unforeseen conditions on the site?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, and then on to 5.10.
Yes, item 5.10,
You want me to vote on 5.9?
Yes,
Can't do them together?
yes,
Yes, we,
singly.
did you say yes, we can't?
You need to take a separate vote for each one.
Okay. Entertain a motion to, trustee Archuleta moves that we approve 5.9.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Baxter. Roll call.
Irma Archuleta,
Aye.
Virginia Baxter,
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg,
Aye.
Doug Otto,
Aye.
and Sunny Zia.
aye.
5.10. Trustee Zia?
Yes, question I have is on contract number 99691.9, Chavez, and I know I'm going to butcher this name, Shimasaki Strategic Education Services for $41,998. This is for amendment number 3 to increase the amount and extend the term for the legislative consultant services. I'd like to understand what time period does it cover? That's one question. How long does this increase their term of service? That's the second question. What is the total amount they're being paid this year? And when was the last time these services were put out to bid or solicitation?
So I will handle the question, the last couple of questions. I'll turn it over. I don't have the term in front of me. I'll hand that over to Vice President Gable. But as you recall, Dale Shimasaki and his team presented the last board meeting. We amend the contract every time we grant them another term. I'll let Vice President Gable talk about the terms. And it was about 3 years ago when we solicited bids for political consultants.
And this amendment is to extend the term for 3 months.
And what's the total amount they're being paid this year?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay, so what's the total value of their contract? Do we know that? Because this only states the amendment.
Correct. I'll look to Alan or Margie. Either one of you know off the top of your heads?
Well, I'm sure we're going to look at these because I've asked for a look at this threshold. So I know Trustee Otto and I have a pending meeting for our audit committee, and this is something that I'd like to look at to have a little bit more information because this is only covering the amendment amount. It would be nice to see what, similar to what we have in the purchase order line items, which is very nicely codified with the big picture of how much it is the actual value of the contract, the term of the contract, and the description of services. So if we solicited 3 years ago, is there an intent to go ahead and recompete this work at some point, or is this going to continue to be amended?
As with most of our service contracts, there will be a point in time when we go back out and get more bids. At this point, there has been very little legislative activity, so we have not gone back out, but we can certainly go back out in the next year or so. And we were waiting for, the last time I went back out was when our director was Mark Taylor, and now with Mr. Pope, he's had an opportunity to work with them for a year, and if he feels that it's time to go back out, we certainly would support that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Okay. Entertain a motion to approve 510. Moved by Trustee Archuleta,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Zia. Roll call vote, please.
Irma Archuleta,
Aye.
Virginia Baxter,
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg,
Aye.
Doug Otto,
Aye.
Sunny Zia.
Aye.
Agenda topic six, human resources. 6.1, the revised salary schedule classifications exempt from the merit system. Entertain a motion. Or is this support?
Second.
Moved and seconded. We vote on that.
Who? Sorry, I was still doing my tracking.
Oh, sorry.
Trustee Archuleta and seconded by Trustee Baxter.
Archuleta and Baxter. Thank you. Okay. Irma Archuleta,
Aye.
Virginia Baxter,
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg,
Aye.
Doug Otto,
Aye.
and Sunny Zia.
Aye.
Okay. Agenda item under Student Support Services 7.1, new board policy and administrative regulation 1005 and deletion of board policy and administrative regulation 5005. This has to do with our policy on freedom of speech, time, place, and manner restrictions, and has been around for a couple of years now. We've been working on this. So can we get a report on this?
We certainly can. I will turn it over to Vice President Peterson, but just to lay some groundwork, as you said, Board President Otto, we've been looking at this for quite a bit of time. This issue of free speech and time, place, and manner has been an issue that all public institutions of higher education have been struggling with throughout the country. There have been a number of challenges to board policies throughout the nation, and we've been monitoring those, and we want to proactively adjust to those challenges and ensure that our time, place, and manner is as open as possible to anyone who wants to demonstrate. Having said that, we need to ensure that the business of the college and the instruction that we give our students isn't disrupted, so we've tried to achieve that balance with this revised board policy, and I'll let Vice President Peterson discuss how we got here and some of the nuances that are in the board policy, but more importantly, the regulation, which is what actually allows us to carry out the policy.
So starting with the policy, the primary change that you'll see in the policy is a reflection that the policy on freedom of speech, time, place, and manner really applies to all campus constituents and not just students. So it really is including students, employees of the district, and members of the public. And as such, we would like to move that policy out of the 5,000 student services band to more appropriately into the 1,000 band that applies to all constituents. So that's the deletion of Board Policy 5005 and the creation of Board Policy 1005. The primary differences that exist within the administrative regulation that you'll see really is, as Superintendent President Oakley mentioned, that we are expanding access for the freedom of speech on campus. So we have historically had free speech zones. We won't have those anymore. So open walkways, grassy areas, anything that does not impact the work of the college, so will be available. We will still be expecting those that come on campus to notify us that they're on campus to check in. They don't have to check in ahead of. They don't have to notify us in advance. However, we encourage them to notify us in advance because if we have multiple organizations or entities that come the same day, we will give preference to those that notify us first when there is a conflict in size or in the presentation, what is being communicated.
So if I wanted to organize a protest about these recommendations with regard to communications, who would I notify?
The Office of Student Life.
It depends. If you're on the board, then you have to notify me.
Don't I hire and fire you?
I believe the board does, Trustee Otto. Not one individual.
Good one, Sonny.
I'd entertain a motion to fire the president, superintendent. Okay, any questions for Vice President Peterson? I would just say that the abbreviated version of this is that we've been talking about this not only because of this litigation, but because of how important it is that people can exercise their rights and that they not be restricted in the doing of that. And yeah, there were lawsuits that were filed. In fact, I know the law firm that brought some of those lawsuits, and they're very, very good, and they were winning large judgments, and it scared us. And so I'm very pleased that we've stuck to it and stayed with this for this period of time and worked with the Community College League of California and others to come up with good, sound policies. It's taken a while, but I'm glad that we've gotten here. If there's no more discussion, I would this is informational. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's first reading
Okay.
today. It'll come back for adoption at the next meeting.
Great, okay. Then Administrative Services 8.1 First Quarter Budget Performance Report. This is informational report.
Yes, and for the report, I will turn it over to your favorite performance report presenter, Vice President Gable.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah. Thank you, President Oakley. So in your attached is the report that I'll be going over, and those will be the pages that I'll refer to as I'm discussing it. So starting with page 1, again, this is our first quarter report for the 2015-16 fiscal year. And there's not a whole lot of changes to go over. It's so early within the fiscal year that we're not reflecting a lot of changes. But you can see there on the revenue side for the state apportionment, the total state apportionment, we are projecting a decrease at this point in time of $143,544. That is due to a change in the deficit factor that the state has applied to our apportionment. So we built our budget on a 0.5% deficit factor. The state came out with a revision in September that brought that deficit factor up 2.5885%. And there was also a slight change in the FTES that is funded based upon the September revision from the Chancellor's Office. So that's the result of the decrease in total apportionment. So, revenue of the $143,000. So we are still projecting $109.8 million in apportionment. It's just slightly less at this point in time due to those changes. No other changes on the revenue side at this point in time. As I said, it's still early into the semester or fiscal year, so we're not projecting any changes yet. So there you see at the bottom of page 2, the total revenue and other financing sources is the change of $143,544. That's a decrease from where we were of the budget. So our total projected revenues at this point in time are $129,033,802. Moving into expenditures, the main changes we have in expenditures at this point in time are our full-time salaries, both for the academic side and the classified side. What we do on page 3 there, under the academic salaries, we take the expenditures that have occurred the first 3 months of the year, and then we try to project that out for the remaining 12 months of the year, and then take into account known vacancies that we believe are going to be filled, and any other changes that we know that are coming up. So what you're seeing here, where we have a savings on the total academic salaries of about $323,000, that is primarily due to vacancies that have occurred that were unknown at the time that we did the budget. The same is true on the classified salaries. So there, on total classified salaries, we're projecting a savings of $652,848. And again, that is due to vacancies that have occurred, positions that have not been filled the first 3 months of the year and still haven't been filled at this point. So we will have a savings. As we know, benefits are a function of salaries. So we are, since we're projecting a savings in both academic and classified salaries, we have a savings in benefits of about $429,000 that we're projecting at this point in time. Moving on to page 4 of the report, this is where we detail out our supplies and materials and our contract services and operating expenses. You can see there that we have zeros on that entire report for the variance, and that's because we are assuming that every department is going to spend all of the dollars allocated to them, so we're not projecting any variances at this point in time. On page 5, you will see a slight variance under capital outlay of $6,232, and that's just because the department hasn't gotten around to doing a budget transfer to cover that requisition that was input that was above and beyond what their budget is. So that will be rectified in the next quarter. So overall, they're looking at total expenditures and other outgo almost to the bottom of the page. You see that we had originally budgeted that we would spend $130.8 million. Right now, we are projecting that we'll spend $129.4 million for a savings of $1,398,711. On the operating surplus deficit line, we are still projecting a deficit of $402,000. Again, the change is a decrease to the deficit, so an increase to what we had originally projected on our ending fund balance of about $1,255,000. So that's the report. Are there any questions that anybody has? Not a lot of change at this point in time.
Any questions? Hearing none, this is an informational item. We'll move on to 8.2, which is the 2015-2016 first quarterly financial status report for the district. We're voting to authorize transmittal of the report to the Chancellor's Office as submitted. I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
Second.
Kellogg, seconded by Trustee Zia. Any questions? Take a roll call vote, please.
Irma Archuleta?
Aye.
Virginia Baxter?
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg?
Aye.
Doug Otto,
Aye.
Sunny Zia.
Aye.
Okay, we are now down to reports. Academic Senate President, any report?
I'd just like to report that the statewide Academic Senate just held their fall plenary session November 5th through the 7th. And our own David Morse is still, he's in his second year as the statewide president, and he did an excellent job presiding over the 3 days. He and his executive committee organized a really wonderful plenary. I'd also like to say that our Dean of Academic Affairs, Michelle Grimes-Hillman, who prior to becoming our dean was a faculty member and was the statewide curriculum chair for the Academic Senate, was honored Friday night with a really nice resolution from the statewide Senate.